Okay, there we go. Mute the audio so we can play the video. Here we go. Bellular on the big mystery solved and current state of the pre-patch.
Welcome back to the news. Okay, everybody, the pre-patch is out in all
grab my
regions,
phone off the ground.
meaning there are things to talk about because there's been a bit of confusion. There's been many bugs, and the UI, which in principle is basically a great move, does have issues. So let's dive in. And lore lovers, I've got a big treat for you because a few neurons connected, and yeah, I think I know what's up. Well, as always, pre-patch has not really been the smoothest experience in the world. It launched with a bunch of UI bugs. Spells weren't appearing in the right place unless action bars were set to always show. Some settings were not being saved on lockout. They've got some visual errors and honestly, a whole bunch more. I mean, one of our guys actually had a host of problems getting team frames to even appear in Arena.
Oh,
and here's a fun tweet. Yeah, healing stream totem launched with no cooldown, which is a rough look. Mythic Plus loot broke. The scaling for old content seems off.
Yeah, I heard about that. I didn't experience the Mythic Plus issues, but I know people did.
So let's hope these things get worked on. And
inflation hitting Azeroth.
Having some teething issues is normal enough, but the UI really does feel like a beta. I mean, really, it should have been marked as such because right now, shit don't make sense. Because there's stuff that feels missing. I mean, buff and debuff filters, which we've been mentioning for months, minimap resizing, grid snap alignment, padding issues, enemy cast bar movement, bag bar movement, micro menu movement.
Okay, so I'm not the only one then. Enemy cast bar movement is not like movable. It's very annoying. I've not figured out how. I thought maybe I couldn't find out how to move it. Yeah, you can't move the enemy cast bar. It's like attached to the enemy
Speed bar
frame.
movement. The list goes on. Those are silly things that should be there. So I think this should be called a beta, and Blizzard should make clear what features we can actually expect to see be added to this over the Dragonflight patch cycle.
Ads are hella buggy,
I'm totally
really.
happy for this to be a beta, by the way, but they should just take the L and not oversell it.
Another beta for
missions
Azeroth?
are
Oh,
just
geez.
bizarre. But thankfully, the community has kicked into gear. We will have a video on essential add-ons soon. And smooth segue into something that's not essential, but it is good, and it's our Patreon. We've got a bunch of pretty dope loot and a special that is running till the end of this month. So if you want to get loaded up on some awesome art, awesome pins, and the class card, then hey, that's the thing to do. Also, for Patreon and channel members, we've got early access to content, including by now one video from our big Dragonflight lore series and 2 audio versions of that, as well as our whole Lower Walking podcast.
We do need healers.
And a whole bunch more, including early access videos. Honestly, patrons, you're...
there you go.
You have no idea how incredibly helpful you guys are. It really does mean a lot, and hopefully, we're able to give good shit back in return. So you can check out the link down below. Okay, next then, a few changes. First, the character limit is now 60, up from 50.
Good question. I wonder if WoW tokens are worth more now or later. I don't know, Coleman. That's a good question. Will WoW tokens be probably worth more later than right now?
Effects do work inside Shadowlands areas, but don't work outside of them, with Covenant abilities being treated the same way. And a funny part of this is how a few Covenant abilities, of course, got mirrored into talents. But if you use the talent version, it puts the Covenant ability version on cooldown. So I guess in a way you can build around already having that power to squeeze more out of your talents. Now on that, the Mage Tower has been closed until sometime after Dragonflight. Basically, it would be a bit off. And given that we're doing a talent revamp and all of that, I think Blizzard almost certainly doesn't want to create a situation where, there's a window of time where the Mage Tower is untuned to the point of not being a viable game feature, or ends up being so easy that it feels busted and it kind of diminishes the achievement of
Should have tried it when it was broken.
It's unfortunate, but I at least understand why they're doing it. And then also, Time Walking Mythic Plus, of course, has ended. That was only for the Legion expansion, and for Blizzard's perspective, that doesn't really make sense anymore, given that older dungeons will be a part of regular seasonal rotations. Next then, Shadowlands is now part of the base World of Warcraft subscription, as is normal. And finally, some good news. Work orders are getting tested on beta. Finally. They really did cut it kind of close in those, and to be honest, a lot of details, they are kind of coming together rather late in the game. Now, that's the core game news.
Yep, that's what we just talked about.
Next, we've got the big lore. Legacy's Chapter 1 is out, and in a way, it's...
I like this. I liked Legacy's Chapter 1 a lot. I thought it was cool. We watched it live on the stream. It was really, to me, Norse Dormu obviously is going to play a big role in the expansion, but I just like what they've done with him so far and everything that Norse Dormu is starting to do.
Straightforward in that we see a heavily abridged version of the Dragon Aspect's origin story, albeit without the Watcher tier, which was odd. So Nos Dormu is essentially
why wasn't Tyr in there?
History,
his dungeon is in there.
Specifically, their fight against Galakrond. One that Tyr should be in because he literally did fight alongside them, famously losing his hand in the process.
Right.
Maybe we'll learn more of that. So it's kind of interesting they chose to cut that out and focus in on just the dragons. I suppose it would have felt odd to have included Galakrond's kind of silly canonical death, where he basically just has a big rock shoved down his throat. So in a way, we don't learn too much here,
about
but
that.
It clicked for me. So Nos Dormu does speak of an ancient enemy returning, and that as they did, the dragons that is, the Drakthir will have to make a difficult choice.
Right.
Now, on that choice, I wonder if that is having to turn against those of their own kind who side with the enemy, because a bunch of Drakthir do side with the Primalists. As for an ancient enemy returning, that's harder to know, because he could just be referring to the Primal Incarnates, who are essentially the anti-dragon aspects, who have clearly, at least for Razageth anyway, broken out of jail. But that's just an internal threat. I mean,
right.
ancient enemy...
That whole Razageth broken out of jail stuff is going to be the first raid that we play. The first raid, Vault of the Incarnates, is all about that Razageth, wanting to bring back the proto-drakes. They all feel like this new dragon, right, what the dragon aspects became, essentially, when they got their gift from Tyr, is like a taint. Not a taint like what you're thinking. It's like a tainted proto-drake. It's like the curse of flesh to them, right? They don't like it. They want to be pure proto-drakes. And that's the whole story behind that raid.
I mean, hell, what if Galakrond is like somehow coming back? Well, on that, a Titan lore book found in Uldaman basically has us hear that Yogg-Saron had corrupted living waters. And
it's primal forces, kind of, yeah.
Titan keepers could be assured that the evolution of another Galakrond will not be triggered by, by ingesting filtered water. As a side note here, Tirshold, also known as Oldoris, is the big Titan complex on the Titan Isles. It has a thing called the Halls of Infusion, which kind of acted as like a big water filter for old god corruption.
Right.
/ infuser of order magic. But anyway, from this, it seems like Galakrond came about through Galakrond consuming Yogg-Saron corrupted stuff. And that actually makes a lot of sense, because Yogg called himself the god of death. And to a lot of players, that kind of didn't really make sense, especially thinking of like Zoval and everything. Unless you remember, though, with this, that those consumed by Galakrond would somehow rise up in a form of undeath. Now, going back to the ancient enemy that Nos Dormu spoke of then, is it Galakrond, that ancient enemy? Or is it the thing that we learned created Galakrond, Yogg-Saron? And that gets me thinking, because funnily enough, Yogg-Saron was shown to be active during the Legion PrePatch questline. But we've basically not heard a peep from Yogg-Saron since.
Yeah.
The focus was N'Zoth.
That's true.
Now, what if N'Zoth's doings were, of course, also masking a move for Yogg-Saron? That would be a fairly old god thing to do, because we know that the old gods basically do work together when times are tough. And this got me to a thought. Dragonflight could reintroduce Yogg-Saron and Galakrond and tie them into the plot line with Nos Dormu and Morozond. For we've been led to believe, so far anyway,
What's up? How's it going?
Nos Dormu's turn to the
no
dragon
problem,
aspect Morozond was at least in some way helped by old god interference.
We can start to get summons out.
But all of this seems, it does seem like the sort of background machinations you would expect for old gods. And then it got me thinking about some of Nos Dormu's
I think Morozond, we're going to see him. Like, this is going to happen. Now, I don't know if we're going to kill him necessarily, or whether we're just going to free his mind from the corruption. But I would say this is definitely like a raid tier or some, there's a storyline to be had here.
It does seem like the sort of background machinations you would expect for old gods. And then it got me thinking about some of Nos Dormu's lines in this as well. They stood out to me. He says that it's his fate to see all of time and that his story is written, while the Drakthir's is only beginning to unfold. Now, does that strongly imply fate? I think it kind of does. That they're not carving their own path, instead they're walking along their fated path, with the point being that fate describes the outcome, but that which you experience to
Bet
be
Galakrond
free,
at the end of the expansion?
they're
I
not
don't
carving
know.
their own path, right?
If we do fight Galakrond at the end of the expansion, it's going to have to be some kind of like either they resurrected him, which could happen because I don't know if you guys remember this. There is a character from Hearthstone whose goal was to resurrect Galakrond, and that character has been data mined. He is in the expansion. He is a God. What are those guys called? Those nether-looking guys. They're all wrapped up in bandages. There's a name for them. I forgot. But he's one of them, and his goal has always been to resurrect Galakrond. So either if we do fight Galakrond, it's either going to be a resurrected version, potentially weakened resurrected version or something like that, or we have like a time, Caverns of Time event where we go back and witness the fight and join in the fight kind of stuff. Yeah. Nexus Lords, yeah. There's another name for them. They're called like Nether something or something. I forgot. They're the ones that we go to do our transmog. They have a name. That race.
Instead, they're kind of walking along their fated path. But the thing there that a lot of people can miss is that even though they're walking, this fated path, fate describes outcomes. But it does not describe the experience of walking that path, which is an experience where the illusion of free will be experienced, right? I mean, it's that idea that you, and I don't mean you specifically, that you would always make the choice that you end up making, given all that you know and who you are and how you think. But the thing is that you, with the brain that you have, right, you'll always make that choice. But in your experience of making that choice, you have the illusion of doing something else. Realistically, you would never do. Now, let's not dive into determinism and free will and I guess Sam Harris-like things. But suffice to say, I have a feeling that Blizzard want to touch on that, right? Because the way that Nosdormu speaks is very much like, there is the pure timeline, the real timeline, that his story is written within that. Right? It's this ordered view of time with a true timeline. And to me, that's clearly just Titan bullshit when you think about how they've set up order and disorder to oppose each other.
True.
I basically think that what the Titans told Nosdormu is the true timeline. I think that is just one potential timeline. It just happens to be the one where the Titans win. And that's why they want him to treat it like the only true path. So this kind of, honestly, this is what linked with me today in my head when I was writing today's video, right? This kind of realization. I think this.
Did you play any Modern Warfare, Sam? I did not. Could play a key. No, not over the weekend. I didn't. But I'm gonna get into it. It was just a busy weekend. I just didn't. And Michigan played on Saturday night, kicked Michigan State's ass as I expected. And then after that game, I watched some House of Dragons to catch up on that. So I didn't end up playing.
Role in the expansion. I mean, hell, I actually think
I do have it.
Realizing this is what is going to turn Nosdormu into Morozond, right? Because he speaks of seeing the true end. Because in the end time instance, whenever Morozond says, he basically sees the true end, and actually this end time
I did see the fight
is
after
preferable
the game.
Because the true end is so bad. And that is then when it really clicked for me. What if Nosdormu cannot see past his own death? That would mean that he would never be able to see the end result of the timeline he was charged with protecting. So what if he sees that his death is actually just part of a Titan plan, and that whatever is brought about by that plan, of which his death is a part, that would be a very bad outcome? Is order winning really a good thing? What does absolute order mean? Well, here's a quote. And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord,
my precious,
you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth.
Shit,
all shall love me and despair. So that's what Galadriel says if she takes up the ring. Hell, I mean, even Sauron, the character,
Lord of the Rings,
kind of window of redemption at the start of the Second Age and is super motivated by order. And by the way, on that, just a thing, if you are watching Rings of Power, I mean, whatever, you do you, but it is literally a non-canon adaptation, like even in terms of legal rights stuff. So yeah, the kind of legit version of Tolkien and characters like Galadriel, that is in books, not in Rings of Power. Just so you don't get
I didn't know that.
With the point I'm trying to make. But anyway, Galadriel's dark timeline, if she like takes up the ring, it kind of shows us this idea of, you know, the thing that we think may be good. Galadriel literally, you know, called the Lady of Light, that, you know, gone too far, it's very bad. And I think that's what Nosdormu will get a glimpse of in this expansion. And I think that's how he will turn into Morozond, right? As a big rebellion against this
I think we're going to see that happen.
Terrible fate that he was charged with dying to bring about. And honestly, I think that actually could be really great lore. Because the whole thing of like the details of Nosdormu's turn, that's always been a fascinating thing. And if it is along the lines of what I'm speculating here, I actually do think that would be a pretty satisfying resolution to the mystery. Then finally, just change to Thundering, which is the new affix for Dragonflight, or at least Season 1. So it's changed again. It now impacts all 5 players with debuffs, making it so that players
so now not only the ones
stunned if there is a possible person they could clear their debuff with within 100 yards.
Okay.
And that makes it so that I guess a single death doesn't cascade like...
Right, because then a death would like make the numbers messed up and then everyone would get stunned automatically.
Hard. Then that makes sense. The stun for failing the mechanic is 4 seconds down from 8, and the damage done by it is a little less catastrophic, and marks can be removed using immunities, which overall is pretty good changes. It also means you can safely run back to the group if you die to the affix, and overall it's a pretty elegant solution to applying this debuff to 5 players, but only 4 players being able to clear the mechanic. And with that said, that basically is it for this week's WoW News. At the very least, I hope you found that lore segment interesting. It certainly was pretty interesting to me.
No,
If you'd like more lore, including the Lore Walking podcast, of which there's really quite a few episodes, maybe it's like 5 or 6 hours of content now.
Nice.
That's over on our Patreon, as is the art that we'll physically mail to you. There's also a special running until the end of this
Great
month.
stuff.
Or, even some
as usual from Mr. Bellular.
Gorgeous.
We do have another video that we can watch later. We're not going to watch it now. Otherwise, people bring out their pitchforks.
Of early videos and all that, they happen over there as well.
Thank you so much for that one, Mr. Bellular. We enjoyed it. And it is time, guys. It is time on this wonderful